Hello, and welcome to Based on Facts, where fiction and superstition meet logic and scientific facts on WELT 95.7 FM, broadcasting from the Allen County Public Library. This week, we're going to be covering fake news and PizzaGate, but first I'd like to go back and continue some of the stuff we said last week. We discussed the DAPL, or Dakota Access Pipeline, the oil pipeline that's going through North Dakota. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to introduce myself even. My name is Chris Rex, by the way. And we were discussing the DAPL last week. And I just wanted to finish up. There were some other points that I kind of forgot to mention because I was kind of rushed. I tried to throw way too much information into that show. So I just wanted to mop that up first, and then we'll move on to the fake news stuff, because that's really kind of one of the things that's been playing a big part of the news this week, at least as far as American news here. So just to finish up the DAPL, some people were concerned that I didn't quite discuss certain things as far as what efforts had been made to involve the Standing Rock Sioux, in the decision to try to put this pipeline through their reservation, their area, their property, their territory or whatever. And I was very thrown off by that, because I was like, you realize that 2 federal judges signed off on these lawsuits saying that the Energy Transfer Partners people who own the pipeline actually did things appropriately. They got all their permits, got all the necessary signatures, addressed all the people, followed all the rules and procedures. This is a highly regulated thing to try to put a pipeline through the middle of the country. They did everything. They did everything correctly, actually. And so for people to sit here and be like, well, they didn't quite address the Native Americans directly, well, that's a load of crap. A load of crap, all right? It says here, the Standing Rock Sioux met with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers 11 different times. 11, over the course of 2 years. Okay? They met with the person in charge of historical artifacts and sacred sites of the Standing Sioux. They met with him a number of times, and he signed off on everything. The only exception is at the very last moment, when they were finally physically bulldozing the ground that the Standing Rock Sioux owned, aka this year, not 2 years ago, this year, the day before they broke ground on that territory that the Sioux owned, the Sioux filed a new paper with their tribal elder or whatever in charge of artifacts and sacred sites. They filed that new paper trying to have an injunction put on the whole construction business for the oil pipeline. They tried to do that the last day of the week, okay, on a holiday weekend, no less, when the construction was actually starting the next day. What kind of sense does that make? That's unbelievable to me. Why would you do that? Why would you do that and expect to get any positive results from that? I mean, if I expect my application to be processed, I'm going to be counting on at least 3 business days. Much less, if I'm talking about a holiday weekend, I'm going to expect about 5 days in reality, okay, counting the weekend. So, I don't know what they were thinking. The fact that they're filing this last-minute paperwork and then griping about it. You had 2 whole years. You met with these guys 11 different times, and you didn't think it was prudent to bring it up then? But now all of a sudden, last minute, now that everything's actually being constructed, now all of a sudden you're throwing a fit and being like, oh wait, there's more stuff. When everybody else in the world, including many different archaeologists, have signed off on all this business, saying that no, there's nothing more sacred, there's no more artifacts, there's no more burial sites, no nothing. Go ahead and build. Everybody gave it the okay. But then all of a sudden last minute they have an issue with it. Yeah, I'm really irritated that happened. That the Sioux took offense to that, because honestly they were the ones being slackers in the process. So you don't blame the teacher when the student turns in their homework late and gets a 0 for it. You don't do that. I've had students try to do that to me. I've experienced that. It's ridiculous. What's even more ridiculous is when I have to sit in a principal's office with the principal and that parent to explain why I gave their child a 0 on the paper. It's because they turned it in late. And I have a strict policy to where if you turn it in late, you get 0 credit. It stayed in the syllabus. It's not rocket science. Why am I even in here? Why am I wasting my time with you people? And that's why I retired from being a teacher in high school. Because there was so much politics to it. That was ridiculous. There is no reason I should have to go to the principal's office every single time that a parent has a complaint that's really not a complaint at all. It's just them griping because their kid isn't getting the grade that they want because their kid is being a slacker, is being lazy, is cheating, is taking shortcuts, is plagiarizing, is turning stuff in late. That doesn't fly with me in the classroom at all. I have no tolerance for that. So yes, I gave your child a 0. Yes, I took off points. What do you want from me? I'm here to do my job. How about you let me do it? Anyway, getting back to the pipeline. Yeah, I guess I already kind of covered the fact that there were no burial or cultural sites along the path of the pipeline. Work had no business to be stopped. But lo and behold, look at what happened. Somehow, for some reason, there was a presidential order kind of movement where Obama actually went in and stopped the construction of the pipeline. As much as I love Obama, and as much as he has done awesome, wonderful things for this country in the past 8 years, gosh, he is doing something right now that really irritates me, because there is no reason that he should be getting involved in this situation. It was a very straightforward situation. The Sioux screwed up. They were lazy. They didn't even, actually I didn't even mention this, they didn't even go to the 7 meetings that were scheduled between them and Energy Transfer Partners, the owners of the pipeline. Okay, they went to the 11 meetings with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, but they didn't go to any of the 7 meetings with the owners of the pipeline themselves. So when it comes to them griping about the pipeline, I have 0 mercy. I have 0 empathy for those people. Just what are you thinking? You want to not even be involved in the process, but then you want to gripe when the decision is made. Actually, this is a decision that you actually made and signed off on, by the way. Okay. Evidence for that is if you look at what the Native Americans got in return, is they actually got funding to create a whole new water system. Whole new water treatment plant. Okay, I'm talking about $30 million plant from back in 2009 when we first started throwing around this idea of this pipeline. Okay, this water treatment plant collects water 70 miles downstream from where this pipeline is going to be. 70 miles, that's really pretty incredible. Alright, so if there was a break in the pipeline, there would be a 9 to 14 hour advance notice to shut off the water intake valve at that point that's 70 miles downstream. Okay, 9 to 14 hour notice, that's a lot of notice, a lot of advance notice. Right? Their current water intake valve is 20 miles downstream, all right, which gives them only about a 3 or 5 hour window. So yeah, that's cutting it kind of close. All right, so I admit that that's a little sketch, a little dangerous. So that's why they agreed to help give these people, give these Standing Rock Sioux a $30 million grant out of the 2009 American Recovery and Reinvestment Act to give these people a new water treatment plant, so that they would be secured for that purpose, be insured to have fresh and clean water, even in the event that this pipeline breaks. Okay, because we've looked at another situation before where there was a pipeline inlet, a water inlet at about 80 miles downstream after a pipeline break, and we actually didn't see any appreciable amounts of hydrocarbons in the water at that particular point. So it's actually kind of considered a safe zone, so to speak. Not completely safe, but safe enough for human consumption, most definitely. Okay, so we've already established this by looking at incidences in the past. Now, just to look at what that $30 million grant would do, it would actually build a new water treatment plant, complete with a pump station, a 5 million gallon storage tank, several pipelines, basically enough water. It would basically provide enough fresh water for 10,000 different residents. Right. Now, obviously, in this context, we're talking about residents on the Sioux Reservation, so that's awesome. That's really cool. Why there's a big to-do about this whole thing is beyond me. Especially when we consider where the pipeline is going to be buried. I mean, it's going to be 92 feet below the riverbed, buried in hard clay. Alright, if anybody knows anything about clay, not much gets through clay. Okay, clay, you might as well, clay is basically the next best thing to bedrock. Alright, not much gets through that, really. Especially when you're talking about hard, sludgy type substance like oil. Alright, very, very difficult for that to percolate through that. So yeah, we're not talking about 6 feet. We're not talking about 20 feet. 92 feet. That is huge distance underneath that river. Alright, so if it breaks, you have a lot of shielding between that and the riverbed before it starts percolating up and spreading downstream. And it's because of those types of safety precautions and practices that we end up with these scenarios where we can assert that, hey, 80 miles downstream, man, that's probably going to remain pretty clear. Pretty clean of water even after an oil pipeline break. Alright. So just some things that we have to keep in mind there. Another thing that I'd like to bring up very briefly as far as that situation is concerned is I started looking more into the situation regarding what the protesters are, what they've done. There were reports of some protesters having knives along the way, so once again, just trying to get at that notion that the protesters are unarmed. That is entirely not the case. There were several protesters with knives that probably used them to injure some of the security guards, guard dogs, and police officers along the way. We also have to keep in mind that there's some collateral damage going on from this whole protest, or at least there was, because we've actually seen 30 cows go missing from nearby ranches. Alright, 30 cows. And if they go missing, you can probably guess where they went. They probably got cooked up on a spit and distributed to all the little visitors and protesters at these demonstrations. As far as things that have actually been found, we have found 4 cows that were dead, and then 1 horse that was also found dead. Now, the cow was actually, one of the cows was shot with a small caliber firearm, and another cow was actually pelted with a number of arrows. Okay, so we have 2 cows that were injured. Fortunately, a veterinarian looked at them. They were predicted to survive and recover just fine. And that was on October 18th. So we have a couple other situations here that kind of throw into the mix, in addition to the fact that, like I said, the Obama administration has actually stepped in and prevented the construction permit from moving forward. So all construction on the pipeline has stopped right now due to this presidential intervention, so to speak. So at the moment, it seems that the protests have won. The protesters have won. And that really aggravates and confuses me as to why or how that was able to happen. I don't know. So, just wanted to wrap up some things from last week before we move on to this week's material. This week is all about fake news. All right, we have this whole notion of fake news is basically kind of looking at an article online that appears to be a legit news website, uh, and it turns out not to be. So we have kind of a situation where a website is kind of mimicking or dressing up like a news source and then providing information that is basically entirely false. Obviously, the big issue with these is that they try to cloak themselves in the guise of facts because they will involve certain facts, but then they'll just take it in a whole different direction and just completely fabricate this whole line of reasoning. All right. So when we talk about what a fake news site is, we're talking about things that are being shared on social media, that are turning up pretty high in the Google search results. And these websites are typically designed to be clickbait, all right, which is kind of what we call an article with an incredibly suggestive or a very catchy kind of title to it. That's very provocative and really encourages the reader to click on the article just to read the article and figure out what it's all about. You know, let's say, just for an instance here, I'm just making this off the top of my head. Trump walks into the White House with a grin on his face. He comes out with a frown on his face. Guess what happened in there? You know, that's an example of a provocative article, because you're like, oh, well, what did happen in there? If he's coming out with a frown, like, what caused that? You know, or even going as shallow as Clinton gets on an airplane. You'll never guess what happens next. Ugh. It aggravates me seeing these articles because it really does grab you. It's an attention grabber to get you to come in and click on the article and go to it and view the article. It doesn't necessarily mean that there's anything of substance or anything that's really based on facts in there. Go figure. Which is why I try to avoid clickbait types of scenarios, but unfortunately, those are the articles that grab views, and I hate doing that myself. I really hate that, but I figure if it's actually an article based on facts, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with clickbait if it's actually based on facts, and if I don't get a virus in the process of clicking on the clickbait. Let me clarify that. There are a number of sketch websites out there that have ads on them that will install viruses, malware, whatever, onto your computer if you visit the website. So there are definitely some dangerous, a number of dangerous clickbait websites out there. Fortunately, all the websites that I do, all the articles that I write, those are on non-clickbait type of sites to where they don't have these really dangerous viruses and malwares on them as far as the advertising is concerned. So we don't have to worry about any of that as far as my sites are concerned, but a lot of other websites do. Now, the reason why people do this, why they do these fake news stories, these hoaxes, make up these elaborate stories to really generate some awesome clickbait. Awesome being kind of a relative term. But they do this because the authors or creators of those articles do generate some revenue because of the advertising shown on the site. So if we have people going to the site, there's a greatly increased chance of people being able to see those ads. People click on the ads. If they follow through with the ads, they will then generate revenue for the creator of those articles, because they're essentially serving as the host for all this advertising. Okay, and that's how, we understand this as far as YouTube is concerned, right? You post a video on YouTube and monetize it with ads. You know the ads pop up during the playing of that video. You understand that. That's how you get money from the video if you get enough views. My videos get surely a couple pennies a year. I'm rolling in the dough from all the views I get from these videos. So it's just there really is a situation where we're relying on the advertisers to really generate revenue for the creators of those articles. So these types of fake and hoax news sites have really become a powerful source of influence in modern day because of how much the web is just spread to everything. Especially with social media as a way to further disperse this information. I mean, this stuff is just everywhere nowadays. As such, it becomes very difficult to determine what is legit and what is fake. How do we know which sites actually have facts and which sites actually have myths, and kind of mix the facts and myths together to try to become even more convincing for you, to lead you to change your mentality, change your opinion on various subjects, and just, like I said, draw people in and kind of brainwash them essentially into their own little fantasy world that only exists on those fake news sites. As an example here, we just had an example a few days ago on 12/14, so December 4th, or I'm sorry, the 4th. So December 4th, we just had an example of a North Carolina man walking into a pizza joint in Washington, D.C. Alright? And he was acting on false information that he had seen on a fake news site. Alright? The name of this pizza site was, or this pizza place was Comet Ping Pong, and there was this conspiracy theory behind it that's been, funny enough, called PizzaGate. Alright? One of these things that is just so ridiculous, you have to give it a ridiculous name. So the ridiculous name they would give it is PizzaGate. Because apparently this is just as good as Watergate, only we're talking about a pizza joint. Alright? And part of the whole joke, so to speak, behind this is that it's all because of the mention of the word pizza. Alright? And we'll kind of go on more about that later. But with all these mentions of the word pizza, people started associating that word with the word pedophilia. And so they started generating this whole scenario that, hey, this pizza joint is really a pedophilia kind of kingpin area, all right, where we have all these different people coming together and playing a part in this international satanic child sex abuse ring. Yeah, the pizza place is just a front for that. All right, that there are a number of powerful Democrats that are in charge of this. Because, that's the only way that Democrats can have babies for breakfast every morning, Clearly that's got to be the reasoning there. And as such, Hillary Clinton is definitely the leader of this kingpin of sex traffickers. So, I mean, yeah, that totally makes sense, dude. So you got to go to this pizza joint and you got to not, you got to screw them over, man. You gotta not shop there. You gotta denigrate them as much as possible. You just gotta screw those guys over, man, because, dang, screw them. As such, there was this North Carolina man who took a rifle into his pizza shop, pointed it at an employee, and then fired multiple times in the store, okay, or in the restaurant. Luckily, he didn't hurt anybody. That's the good news. But he did spend somewhere under an hour thoroughly looking through every bit of that place, okay, turning the whole place upside down, trying to find evidence of these sex slaves, these child sex slaves. Funny enough, he didn't find anything. He was on this quest to investigate these claims for himself, to be a vigilante, because he's so freaking awesome, and needs to save the world from something that everybody knows already, apparently. And so he goes there, he investigates, he finds nothing, and thankfully had the sense to surrender himself over to police. Thank goodness. So nobody was hurt through the whole ordeal. It's incredible that all these fake and hoax news sites were able to generate such a following, such a fervent movement for PizzaGate, that this guy ended up acting out the next logical actions that somebody would do in order to try to bring these child sex traffickers to justice. Just mind-blowing to me. Absolutely mind-blowing. Because this place is actually a nice place, all right? At least from what I hear. I've never been there myself, but from what I hear, Comet Ping Pong is actually a nice little pizzeria. I mean, it's a kid-friendly place. They occasionally have live music playing. Whatever. I mean, it sounds like a cool joint. So, where does all this PizzaGate thing come from? Well, like I said, it has to do with the word pizza. And really it has to do with the word pizza in the context of some of these WikiLeaks. Now, we already kind of talked about WikiLeaks a little bit, so I'm not going to delve into it here. But one of the most recent leaks, right before the election, was some of the emails by campaign chairman, or the campaign manager for the Clinton campaign, John Podesta. All right, there are a number of emails leaked that he sent out. And funny enough, in those emails, pizza was a very common term. I don't know why. I mean, if anybody checked my emails, they would probably see popcorn as a very common term. And so clearly popcorn must mean pedophilia, because that's also a P word. So clearly, whenever I say popcorn, it also means pedophilic acts. I don't know where the logic and reasoning is in that, but whatever. Popcorn's my favorite food. Maybe pizza is John Podesta's favorite food. It's like, dude, let's go out for some pizza. Hey, order pizza for everyone. We'll have a meeting. We'll have a conference, whatever. I really don't see any harm in that. That's really quite a stretch for the conspiracy theorist, I would think. To sit here and say, well, you know, anytime he mentions pizza, is clearly talking about this pedophilic child sex ring that's based out of Comet Ping Pong. You know, it has nothing to do with the fact that Comet Ping Pong is just down the street, has some good quality pizza, it's a good environment. It has nothing to do with any of that stuff. I mean, come on, man. So, alas, here we are at PizzaGate, where all these people believe this. And as a result, the restaurant themselves have actually received a number of death threats. Go figure. From various people shouting that they're gonna, you know, bring this child sex ring down. Crazy, right? Absolutely crazy. Crazy in principle until somebody actually does it. Then it becomes a felony. A lot of felony. So, just kind of amazing the power that some of this stuff has. And so if we actually hear from James Alefantis, who's the owner of Comet Ping Pong, he actually says that this whole thing, this whole PizzaGate thing, is an insanely complicated, made-up, fictional, lie-based story. I hope that those involved in fanning these flames will take a moment to contemplate what happened here today, as in the day that that shooter came into the restaurant, and stop promoting these falsehoods right away. And you know what? He's absolutely right. People have no business spreading these lies, these completely fabricated stories about this place that's really just trying to live out the American dream. You know? They're just a couple of normal people owning this store, this restaurant, just trying to serve pizza to their customers, maybe make a dime or two, and boom. Live out the American way. And all of a sudden they're being trolled by these hundreds of people because of a fake news story that tries to assert this PizzaGate to them. Now, unfortunately, you do have a number of other people perpetuating these sorts of things. People like myself even, which I hate. I hate that. I hate that there are so many people who are on the radio that just perpetuate nothing but myth and misunderstanding. That perpetuate these falsehoods on the radio. Even on our own radio station, we have these people. And that frustrates me and aggravates me that there are so many people out there that just really spread lies, either intentionally and maliciously or out of ignorance because they don't know any better. I hate that. I hate that I'm part of a system that is so tainted with people like that. I'm trying to brighten up the room by serving as a source of facts for people out there. That way they at least get a quality radio show out there that's actually discussing some real facts, some real things that are going on, the real science behind everything, as opposed to just people's opinions and thoughts that are really just garbage, at the very least. And at the very most, are deliberate propaganda crap. They're just meant to misinform and lie to people. I hate that. But so many of these radio show hosts have locked onto this PizzaGate story and have helped perpetuate it. And so the real question on everybody's mind is, well, if these fake or hoax news sites are becoming such a prevalent thing, or are becoming so powerful and influential, well, what are other people doing about it? Because when we think about it, we do have satire websites, like The Onion, for instance. That's one of my favorite ones. The Onion is basically a website where they make up news stories, but they do it with a smile. They do it with the goal of hoping that you'll at least laugh to some degree at their news article, which is so ridiculous it can't possibly be true. Something like Obama admits that the center of the earth is a giant ball of cheese. Like, come on, everybody's got to laugh at that. Nobody's going to take that seriously. That's the most ridiculous thing you could possibly say. Come on, man, that's funny. So there are a number of places like that out on the internet, these satire websites that try to get you to laugh and have fun with their made-up news stories. Unfortunately, these fake and hoax news sites don't take that approach. They take it very, very seriously. And as such, it becomes very, very hard to take a website that is being serious anything other than seriously. The Onion doesn't shy around the fact that they are trying to be ridiculous and humorous. It's posted all over their website. It's in their About section or whatever. They make it very clear that they are a satire website. A number of these other fake news sites, however, do not do that. It's very difficult on a number of occasions to determine whether the site that you're looking at is crap or not. And so you have to basically go on your own little investigation online, using Google to kind of search for some articles that might be on a similar topic and see if you have any corroborating evidence between sources. Because if the source evidence exists on more than one website, then that starts actually building support that, hey, this actually might be a real thing. If we have a number of different reporters from a number of different news agencies collecting information at one particular time on a subject, on some bit of news that's happened, well, you can certainly corroborate that. Each news agency will report it a little differently, but they'll still have predominantly the same core facts involved. These fake news sites are different. You'll see a couple little tidbits of facts intermeshed with an entire web of fiction. That becomes very, very hard to discern which is fact or fiction, because they hide it. They kind of tuck it in there, tuck in the facts with the myths. Very, very difficult to ascertain what's going on there. As such, we're starting to see a little bit of pushback against these fake or hoax news sites. And I love that. That's good. That's great. That's progress, I think. When we talk about the impact, the potential impact of some of this propaganda, it's huge. Like I said, if it can convince somebody to walk into a restaurant and fire off a few rounds, that's a huge impact. All right. Thankfully, earlier this week, on December 5th, we actually had Facebook and Google independently, but kind of coincidentally at the same time, they both ended up cracking down on the revenue that some of these fake or hoax news sites are getting. Alright, so they each implemented their own kinds of changes in order to help make that happen. Help make sure that these news sites are hurt in the way that is going to really impact their pocketbook. Okay, because I mean, I've seen a story on how some of these people that own some of these fake news sites, how they're literally just like two dudes in an apartment who dropped out of college and are just doing these fake news stories all the time. And they generate enough money from these fake news stories that they can afford their apartment and afford to pay all their bills. That's incredible to me. I wish I could make even a remote income from any of the stuff that I do on the side. Whether it be the radio show or the YouTube, I wish I could even make $1 from any of that stuff. But I don't. I make pennies. Okay, which is literally not anything. Alright? And so it frustrates me when I see me doing something that is noble and factual and getting pennies for it, and these people who are just completely making up stuff, basically wreaking chaos all over the United States, and they are earning thousands of dollars of income that they can use to sustain themselves on. That blows my mind. I don't know if that says so much about the American public as it does the character of those people who are writing those news articles. Because they know what they're writing is garbage. They don't care. They're getting a paycheck from it. Alright, it's fun to them. They're kind of like trolling and getting paid for it. Alright, that's one of the best occupations in the world right now, is to troll and get paid for it. Because you are literally just making up crap to make people's lives miserable, to screw with other people and other organizations in ways that will permanently disfigure them. And that's a problem that we'll discuss here. We'll come back to here in a minute. Anyway, as far as what Google did, they actually tried to go in and prevent websites that peddle some of these fake news stories from using their online advertising service. So Google AdSense, right? That's what I use for my stuff. All right, Google AdSense. You know, it's basically a way that they can track advertiser revenue based on the clicks they get, based on how much they get displayed, and then they give some of that revenue back to me. All right, now, like I said, it's literally pennies, very insignificant, but for these people to get millions of views on their articles, that becomes very, very substantial. Okay, and that's how they get their thousands of dollars of income to support themselves, through things like Google AdSense. But now, as of the 5th of December, Google has gone in and said, hey, we're no longer supporting websites like that. We're no longer going to show our ads or have Google AdSense enabled on those websites. Not only on the websites that host those particular fake news articles, but also on any other website that directly helps increase the distribution or shows those particular articles. So they're literally widening their target area and are really kind of confronting this battlefield in the way that's going to really impact the pocketbooks of these fake news people. Because that's why they're doing it. Not doing it necessarily for the lulz, so to speak. Alright, just to be a troll. They're doing it because they're getting a paycheck, an appreciable paycheck from doing this kind of stuff. So it's great that Google is reaching out and doing that. As far as our statement, this is actually kind of what they said here. So that they will restrict ad serving on pages that misrepresent, misstate, or conceal information about the publisher, the publisher's content, or the primary purpose of the web property. Which is to say a website, a photo, whatever that we find here on the web. Okay. So they're going to target this, and target in a big way. Coincidentally, like I said, Facebook also targeted these fake news sites very directly. They actually stated that there were some changes in their Facebook audience network policy that added fake news sites to the list of sites that will not display ads. Now, I honestly didn't think anybody got a paycheck from Facebook, so this is still kind of confusing me. But needless to say, there you go. You at least have a situation where ads will not be displayed on any Facebook stuff that appears to contain fake news. All right. And we'll come back to a little bit of that later with some of Mark Zuckerberg's comments. Now, some people believe that all these different moves by Google and Facebook are in direct response to some of the aftershocks from the whole election thing. Right? Election kind of took America by storm. A lot of people are very frustrated and lost following the election because they honestly didn't think Trump had a snowball's chance, you know? Just to be honest, a lot of people didn't think he had that chance, and sure enough, he's going to be in the White House here in a little over a month. So that's really quite incredible to me, just seeing that and thinking that that's a real thing that's going to happen. I'm just going to have to accept that and come to terms with it and hope for the best. And that's kind of the behavior I've been trying to encourage in a lot of my friends and family members that share my particular views, because we were concerned with some of Trump's desires, some of his campaign points, some of the goals he wanted to accomplish in his presidency. We were concerned about a lot of it. We'll just have to see how much of it he actually follows through with, because he's honestly gone back on at least 10 different things that he said he was going to do. Even just in the past month that he's actually been the president-elect, which I think is kind of funny, but I think reality is finally hitting him. I think he's realizing that he can't quite do everything that he wanted to because of a number of different reasons that he didn't entirely understand or comprehend at the time. That takes a lot to do that. It takes a lot to admit that, even if he won't openly admit it, he's admitting that he was wrong and that he tried to bite off more than he could chew. All right? So indirectly, I'm actually proud of him for doing that, for being able to sit there and bite the bullet and say, hey, you know what, I'm not going to be able to just do away with all of Obamacare. It's not going to happen. I'm going to amend it. I will not repeal it. At least that seems to be what he's saying. Okay, as far as what he'll actually do, we'll see when he gets there. But it's a lot for him to completely go back on his whole, well, I'm going to just destroy Obamacare and get rid of it entirely and just replace it with something new. Yeah, that takes a lot to just completely change directions on that particular topic. So, very entertaining for me. Anyway, coming back around to how people are responding to this whole election situation, we're starting to reflect back on some of the influences that social media may have had on the outcome of the election. So people are thinking, well, what about the influence of all these fake news sites that were incredibly pro-Trump or anti-Hillary? Okay, and would just make up stupid random stuff, you know, that Trump was endorsed by the Pope, you know, that Trump was, you know, so great and useful in these particular disaster scenarios, okay, where he was down on his hands and knees helping people recover from a disaster. You know, he was out shaking hands with the common man, actually connecting with him on a real level. You know, down at a pub in the middle of nowhere. Like, come on, man. Do you even read the stuff that you're actually trying to use as evidence for Trump being awesome here? Honestly. And then you'll see some great anti-Hillary ones, like, oh, Hillary eats babies. Like, come on, Hillary doesn't eat babies. Oh yeah, Hillary lied about being a woman. Like, what? What are you even talking about? You want to sit here and assert that Hillary lies, at least provide some evidence for it. Like, come on, man, you're just making stuff up now. It's so easy to cite these articles. They're incredibly biased and just making up false information. And so we're starting to reflect on that and seeing, well, I wonder if that actually had a significant impact on the election, because the election was so close. It was so head-to-head in so many states. Really quite incredible. And so we're wondering, well, if we start cracking down on these things, maybe we can nip this in the bud for next time around. When we have our next round of presidents, potential presidents to go for the election. That would be great. That'd be great if we can just do away with this whole problem right now while we're recognizing that's a problem, and then move forward from there in a way that's more based on facts. So we'll have to see. We'll have to see if it'll have a positive impact, as far as all these moves by Google and Facebook, see if they have a positive impact on the way that the American public thinks about various things, their opinions on things, their views, their political perceptions. We'll see. We'll see if it helps any of those things. Now, if we look at what the Google top search result was, shortly following the election, because I know I was following the election after the election, we found out that the Electoral College voted in favor of Trump. That was pretty clear. Okay, it was by at least 50 electoral votes. Okay, that was pretty clear. Not really much to hide there. The big question, I was thinking for a couple weeks, was whether Hillary or Trump won the popular vote. And funny enough, for a couple weeks, the top Google search result for final election vote count 2016 was actually a fake news site. Okay, and this fake news site, guess what, reported that Trump won the popular vote, when in fact it was Hillary by almost 2 million votes. All right. And I hate this, but my dad was actually one of these people that shared an article like that reported that information. He was like, yeah, see that? Yeah, Trump won the popular vote too. It's like, what are you talking about? Every single source out there, every single legitimate source out there is saying that Hillary is probably going to win by about 2 million votes. Every single source out there. And look at that, by the time we got the final votes in, it was by about 2 million votes. Okay, maybe a little under, but it was still approximately 2 million. So this fake news site, shortly after Google enacted its changes to its algorithms and how it treats various websites, it's actually deprioritizing that article, because now it's no longer number one. It's down to at least number 2 now. And as the algorithm compensates and adapts, it'll get better, and it'll hopefully be able to shift that fake news crap off of even the first page of results. That would be awesome. It's just, unfortunately, due to confirmation bias, due to people looking for information that only confirms their present beliefs and does not combat or challenge their present beliefs, fake news stuff is going to be around for a long time. It's going to be an ever-present source of chaos and disarray in our society. So the question that some people are asking now is, well, what's the real impact? Like, what's the real percentage of sources that are fake news? Like, how much is this becoming a prevalent thing? And if we talk to Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, founder really, he actually claims that 99% of all Facebook content is authentic, okay, is factual. But he does admit that a small remainder, about 1% or so, consists of some of these fake or hoax news sites. Now, in the grand scheme of things, 1% is actually a pretty big number. That's the unfortunate part. Okay, we would really like to crack down on those to bring it down to at least 0.1%. Okay, because when we consider the fact that Facebook is a global entity, there are 1.8 million people in the world, 1.8 billion people in the world, I should say, out of the about 7 billion, over 7 billion. So just about a third of the population subscribes to Facebook or has some sort of connection to Facebook. I guess that would be closer to a fourth. Maybe a fourth of all people in the world. 1.8 and 7.2. Yeah, that's about a fourth. So That's a really significant amount if we consider a fourth of the world's population, in that every 1 out of 100 are going to be exposed to a fake news sort of situation. That's a huge, huge amount. 1%. 1% of 1.8 billion, funny enough, is about 1.8, is about 18 million. Okay, if I'm doing that math right, I'm just kind of throwing it out there. So 18 million. That's still a really appreciable amount of people. All right, and those 18 million can really get up some momentum to cause some disarray there. But anyway, we do have a survey that kind of talks about how many people get their news from Facebook, and that number is about 50%, which is honestly not as high as I would have expected, but I mean, I know I get a lot of my news from Facebook, and I mean, that sounds kind of stupid, but I do try to ascertain the source and make sure that they are a reliable site, and even sometimes actually corroborate that information with other information from other sites to make sure that it is authentic information. Unfortunately, sometimes, yeah, if I'm tired, if I'm in a hurry, I might just look at the article and then share it without completely verifying all of its contents. I admit I do that. I probably shouldn't do that. But yeah, with half of American adults getting their news from Facebook, it's pretty important to make sure that we minimize the fake news that's available on that medium. Now, with all this stuff becoming so prevalent and having such a potentially high impact on society and the views that people have, we start thinking about, well, are there any legal ramifications behind any of this type of behavior? Okay. You know, because if you really think about it, what some of these people are doing, especially the people that are spouting all this PizzaGate stuff about Comet Ping Pong, that's defamation, all right? They are ruining Comet Ping Pong's reputation permanently, all right? And that can definitely have some legal backfire, because Comet Ping Pong is in its full capacity to sue anyone who spreads that information about them, who spreads that misinformation about them, because that's not based on facts at all. All right, so we have to keep that in mind. That even if you, I mean, it's not such a big deal. You know, it's probably not such a big deal if you just share a link to a fake news site. They probably won't come after you for defamation, but it certainly opens up that possibility. Okay, and if you take that information and you spread it to another person by repeating it in person, if you actually say it to somebody else, that really is defamation, period. That's gossiping. That's what it is. It's basically gossiping and ruining the reputation of somebody else based on something that is unfounded. You know, if you want to gripe at the China buffet, you know, at one of the China buffets here in town and say, hey, their food is crap. That's fine if you thought their food is crap, whatever. But if you want to sit here and claim that, oh, there was like rats running around, there were cockroaches in my food, like, you better have evidence to back that up. Because if you don't, you can get sued for defaming that particular restaurant. So you got to be careful with that. Nobody really thinks about lawsuits anymore nowadays, but as far as, you know, social media is concerned, people really don't think that they can be sued for anything on Facebook, but yes, you absolutely can. And you can especially be sued for saying those kinds of things in person. So just be aware of that. Thank you so much for joining me on today's show. I hope you learned a little bit about fake news sites and the prevalence and impact that they're having on today's society. Hopefully we start cracking down on them a little bit more, kind of like how we're cracking down on some of these fake health products. They're being catered out there as snake oil, so to speak. But thank you so much for joining me. If you're interested in finding any other episodes of Based on Facts, you can just type our name into the search bar, Based on Facts, in Facebook and YouTube, and find our web pages having all of our episodes posted online. So thank you so much for joining me, and have a great one.